Hey everybody, it's Georgia Weedman here, author of Penetration Testing, a hands-on introduction to hacking, and your instructor in this accompanying lab. So today we're going to look at exploitation yet again, but this time it's a little less obvious. It just says exploiting buffer overflow vulnerability, so it doesn't actually tell us what the answer is this time. Anyway, so usual suspects, let's get started. Alright, so IP adder as usual. Again, your IP address is going to be different than mine, so make sure you use yours, and if yours isn't working, I would encourage you to check the IP address as a first thing. So .3 is going to be the target as per usual. Let's see what we've got here with this guy. Seems like he's going to be slow and make me talk. There we go. Anything to save you from another monologue, right, guys? These videos are kind of hard to shoot because it's like on the one hand, you've got people who, just want to get on with it and, get to the meat of it. And then you've got people where it's like, when Vivek says, I have to shoot it myself because people want to see me. It's like, okay, on that logic, then maybe you do want to hear the pen testing stories and about my keyboard and about, other silly things like that. But I'm not really sure how to please both audiences. Maybe that's a problem with, online training in general. Or training in general for that matter. Anyway, so this looks like it's Bad Blue HTTPD. What a great name for a web server, right? Bad Blue. Just kind of sounds like maybe it's because there's things like Eternal Blue. I don't know what makes me anything with bad in the name. Or as I said previously, if it says it's very secure, it's asking for it too. So I guess it's asking for it regardless. If you have a cool name, people are going to be more likely to exploit you, maybe. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't have statistics on it, but I would assume it would be. I know the more popular you are, the more likely you are to be attacked. But anyway, all right. So we didn't actually look at this previously, but something we can do is actually use a tool called Searchsploit. So what that will do is actually look at the exploit database, which is a online repository of publicly available exploits, and it will look for whatever you want it to, really. You can search by CVE number or what have you, but let's just look for Bad Blue. And okay, there's apparently a lot of them. And so, this does have, like, you can pretty much assume if it's .rb for Ruby, it's probably gonna be Metasploit. I don't know. I mean, I say that. I'm sure there's somebody out there who writes public exploits in Ruby who's not in Metasploit. But, chances are, you're gonna be looking at Metasploit modules there. So it looks like we do have some Metasploit modules. And we are version, what did it say, 2.7. So, we want something for version 2.7. And it looks like, 2.72, 1.6. We've got a few here, but I think it is the pass-through buffer overflow vulnerability, and it does look like it's got like perl.txt, which that could be anything code-wise, I guess. And it does look like it has a .rb for our Ruby. So, since it's in the Metasploit section, my guess would be indeed it does have a Metasploit module. But this does give us access to public exploits as well. Certainly be careful when you're using public exploits. Not everybody has your best intentions at heart. With Metasploit, one of the great things about it is we do have some oversight. It doesn't just go into the Metasploit repositories without having some oversight from the community and the people who work there. So, just random something Perl script that you find on the internet, just, be sure, especially if you're going to do something in production, be sure and test it. You don't want to accidentally screw something up because, the public exploit on the internet was dangerous. So definitely, be careful. But anyway, let's pull up MSF console. And let that load. And so we can also do a search here, Bad Blue. And sure enough, It says it's for Bad Blue 2.72b. I'm not sure, that Nmap has any idea what number versions A and B are, assuming there is an A. So we could use our exploit. Did I just lose my IP address? I did, because I copy and pasted that. Luckily, you actually can do regular system commands inside of the Metasploit console. Just execs it. Alright, anyway, so let's use, and we want exploit Windows HTTP bad blue pass-through. Exploit Windows HTTP bad blue pass-through. That rhymes, bad blue pass-through. Anyway, so we show our options as per usual. Again, we can probably ignore most of it, if we need an HTTP proxy or the R port is not 80, which, I didn't really take note of it, but I assume it is. Yeah, it's 80. So we should be good on that front. We should be able to leave that as the default. We don't need SSL. We don't need a virtual host. This says this bad blue 2.7 universal for exploit target. So it looks like all we need as usual is our host. So set option we want to set and what we want to set it to. So set it to our target, which is our .3. Show our payloads here. Again, you can just let this default, but it's worth showing you, I suppose. And we're going to see, since this is a Windows exploit, only Windows vulnerabilities. Windows payloads, rather, sometimes. And that's another thing about the videos. It's like, I should really restart it after that. But we're probably like 10 minutes in. We're real close to being done. I think you guys would rather get it with me, like, being ridiculous than not get it. At least that's what they tell me. All the people who want to launch this and start marketing it. Anyway, so we're going to see payloads for Windows since we're in a Windows module. And so we can set the payload. Again, this can default. And, the typical one for Windows is Windows Meterpreter Reverse TCP. It's probably actually the default. So if we didn't even do this step, it would come out the same way. So Meterpreter is Metasploit special payload. It does have a lot of cool stuff it does. It makes a lot of things really nice and easy. It has a lot of post-exploitation stuff built in, and we'll look at it when we get to it, I guess. We don't want to spend too much time on it now, but I wanted to make sure you guys saw one where you could see the payload options. So you see the regular options that, we already set the R host here. But now that we've added a payload explicitly, we do have payload options. So typically for ones that are connection based, they're going to be lhost, lport, and exit function. Probably exit function, as the name implies, how is it going to exit? Kill the process, kill the thread, send it to the structured exception handler, things like that. You can probably just leave it alone in most cases. Like this is thread. It should just kill the thread. It should be fine. And lhost, so that is the local host that you want it to call back to. And that is going to be the IP address of your system or, wherever you want to send the shell. You certainly could, set up a box in the cloud and send all your shells there. In which case, you would need to explicitly set this. So we could do set lhost and... This is, you don't want to change that to .3. It needs to stay .2 because that is, again, going to be, it's the local host to call back to with the payload. So it's a reverse connection. It's going to, on the target system, call back to the attacker with its payload. So that does need to be, our local host on our box. So .2 with your IP address. Default port, different payloads have different default ports. This, I guess, the only thing to keep in mind with stuff like this is that, a lot of things like intrusion detection are not very good at a lot of things, but the things they are good at is pattern matching for stuff like this. So they will just, a lot of them will just automatically flag any traffic on port 4444 because it's typically a Metasploit port, so that would be a good indication that somebody was using Metasploit on your network if they saw traffic there. So I mean, if you are in those sorts of like don't get caught environments, you could change that. So, I mean, that's really the only thing to keep in mind there. I mean, there's no reason it couldn't be on any port you wanted it to be. So anyway, let's exploit. Well, that was incredibly unexciting. And yep, there we go. Meterpreter. And, you can do help on Meterpreter. And, it's got, things on here. Hash dump. You can just see a couple of the get system. Try to get system if you're not. Play an audio file. Webcam stuff. Keylogger stuff. Basic system commands and things like that. You can also, we'll look at post exploitation and we can run, post exploitation modules. There's also like extensions that you can load into Meterpreter. So, Mimikatz, which is pretty good for getting passwords out of memory, that has an extension. Incognito, if we wanted to steal tokens, the kinds of things that, we'll look at as we learn a bit more about pen testing. There are extensions that we can load in as well. So, Meterpreter is really cool, especially for Windows. I mean, they have Meterpreter for a lot of different platforms, but the Windows Meterpreter is pretty awesome, and we will see it again. But anyway, I believe you can just search on here for flag. I'm not entirely sure where it is. You must specify a valid file glob search for. Isn't the help nice when I'm just like, I don't remember how to do this. I forgot the -F for, I guess, file name. And now we'll call it flag. And hopefully it will find our flag. Okay, it's at root flag. Who even knew there was a root on Windows? Anyway. Alright, so cat... Z root flag, I guess. Yeah, another thing about it, I mean, like a lot of these commands aren't valid on Windows. Okay, it doesn't like that. I can't find the file system satisfied. That's awesome. But I do actually have to get it out. So let's see where we are now. Oh, I'm at zroot, so I should just be able to cat out flag. There. Okay. Cool. I don't know. It probably didn't like the backslashes because it's probably front/base because you can kind of tell it's almost pretending to be Linux. It gives you the Linux commands. So, further proof that I am in fact human and most of the time do not know what I'm doing. There is hope. Anyway, so that's all for this one. There's your flag, and we'll be back next time for some more Metasploit exploitation.